The clock is ticking on the 10-day deadline given last week, Thursday, by the Nigerian Senate Committee on Public Accounts to the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, to answer questions about what the committee calls a discrepancy of 210 trillion naira in the 2023 audited financial statements. Arise Business Correspondent Rotus Oddiri sent in this report.
The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited is in the headlines again. The topic isn't new. Hello, transparency and corporate governance. But this time, the numbers are bigger, much bigger. The big question, is the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited missing, quote unquote, 210 trillion naira? The Senate Committee on Public Accounts says so. Here's the chairman of the committee, Senator Aliyu Wadada, in June of 2025.
We are NNPC and external auditors are here because of discrepancies that we have discovered from their audited financial statement, which is in the public domain already.
He's correct. The 2023 audited financials of the NNPCL have been in the public domain for 10 months. One of the questions that's popped up since the Senate hearing in June of this year is, what took so long? The NNPCL financials were released in August of 2024. Arise News reviewed the financials a day after they were released. 8 months later, in April of 2025, President Tinubu reshuffled the leadership at the NNPCL, with Bayo Ojulari becoming the new Group Chief Executive Officer, replacing Mele Kyari. 2 months after that, we have the Senate hearing in June of 2025 that featured NNPCL and one of its auditors. This hearing didn't make the headlines. So let's get to the numbers the Senate is asking about. Again, from the June 18th hearing, here is Senate Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, Senator Aliyu Wadada.
The figure of the accrued expenses are 103 trillion. While the figure of the receivables is 107 trillion. So in total, figure-wise, you are talking 210 trillion naira.
The committee is taking two line items from opposite sides of the balance sheet. Payables, liabilities of accrued expenses to the tune of 103 trillion naira, and receivables, assets of 107 trillion. They added them together and claimed the 210 trillion naira is unaccounted for and is a discrepancy. NNPCL Chief Financial Officer Dakpo Shegun attempted to explain that they're part of joint venture cash calls.
The 103, 102, and the 107 essentially are made up of JV cash calls that had been requested by the JV operators and JV cash call payments that have been made by NNPC, which were yet to be reconciled because the governance procedure was not done at the time. And that is why we see the description showing reflecting the fact that those two items would wash out because they're basically two sides of the same transaction, which is the cash calls from the JV partners and the settlements by NNPC.
Further explanation is in the notes to the accounts, particularly note 2.24 on commercial arrangements. Let's read this quickly. The group is in the business of prospecting, exploration, and production of crude oil and gas through various wholly owned assets, joint venture arrangements, and production sharing contracts with other companies in the industry. All the concessions are within Nigeria. In the production sharing contracts and joint venture arrangements, the parties fund the exploration, development, and production costs. In the production sharing contract arrangement, The contractors are reimbursed in the event of successful exploration by the allocation of crude oil and gas produced from the fields under certain items, and the group is entitled to 30% management fee of the profits accruing from the operations. The group realizes its revenue from the sale of the crude oil and gas from wholly owned assets and equity share from joint venture operations. And of course, the group being referred to is the NNPCL group. There's further explanation in Note 6, interest in joint operations, associates, and joint ventures under production sharing contracts. A subsidiary of the group, NNPCEMP, that's Exploration and Production Limited, entered into various production sharing contracts with other companies in the industry for the exploration and drilling of some oil blocks under the terms of the various agreements. NNPCEMP Limited's portion of the capital costs incurred for the purpose of petroleum operations is being funded by the operator, that's the carrying party. The operator will recover NNPCEMP's share of costs through the proceeds of NNPCEMP's share of crude production entitlements. During the June 18th hearing attended by NNPCL and its auditors, one of the NNPCL's auditors, Abel Atalo, partner at law firm Mutari Dangana & Co., attempted to provide further clarity on the reconciliation efforts.
It is the first full-year financial statements prepared by NNPCL. Otherwise, what you would have been seeing would have been two separate accounts, the ones for NAPIMS and the one for NNPCL, in which you won't see issues relating to like cash calls and the rest of them, because those were dealt with separately in the Federation's financial statement. And in this same year, we see NNPC transitioning from its old accounting system to the new accounting system. Typically, what happens is that we will confirm that by the end of the year, like our distinguished senator mentioned, these JV operators would have sent in their statements, maybe pending approval by OPCOM.
Let's stop him right there. OPCOM refers to the operating committee within the context of Nigeria's oil and gas joint venture operations. In NNPCL's financial and governance processes, OPCOM is the decision-making body responsible for the approval and reconciliation of financial transactions, cash calls, and operation expenditures related to JV activities. Okay, let's keep going.
These JV operators would have sent in their statements, maybe pending approval by OPCOM, okay, wherein the numbers will come in. Even when the numbers come, because they are rolling, it is in the following year you adjust, because being something you do year in, year out, they more or less like net out. Now, for this particular 2023, why the numbers appear quite irregular in relation to the comparative is that that net off was not done. What happens is that if this JV partner is owing NNPC, that net amount is treated as a receivable. If the JV partner is owing, NNPC is owing the JV partner, it will be treated as payable. And Honorable Distinguished Senator, like you mentioned, it is a cumulative thing. And once that is done, the notes will show you whether it's from 2016 or 2015 on an annual basis, and for the current year on a monthly basis. And that exercise is already being done, considering that they really needed to like pull out the financial statements, such that in the 2024 financials, you see how this will be restated, and it's one of the reasons they're insisting that these reconciliations and the numbers will need to come in, so that we know, unlike what you have in 2023, where it's an overpayment, i.e. a receivable, it will go on its own on a net basis, on the basis of the JV partner as a receivable. Where is a payable, that's net payable by the Federation, NNPC, that will be shown in the financial statement. So that's clarification we need to like put across to the members.
There was a remarkable exchange where the chair of the committee, Senator Aliyu Wadada, didn't know that the Petroleum Industry Act merged the published accounts of NAPIMS, that's the National Petroleum Industry Management Services, its now newest, which is the NNPC Upstream Investment Services. He didn't know that they essentially merged those accounts with the NNPCL from 2023 onwards.
The question is, my own question, is it lawful for a corporate body to have its own audited financial statements separate from its own divisions? 1. 2, NAPIMS and NNPC had over the years, within the given period, produced two different audited financial statements of NNPC separate from that of NAPIMS, up to 2022 or thereabout. Then from 2022, they now stopped. NAPIMS stopped producing its own audited financial statement. So, to me, and for me, to me as an individual, for me as a representative of the people, this is confusing. And most of the people I represent are not technically informed. So I need to really be better informed so that I can disseminate these, ambiguities.
NNPCL Chief Financial Officer Dakpo Segun explained.
The Petroleum Industry Act, which this National Assembly did one of the greatest things ever by passing into law. The bill was passed into law by this National Assembly. Basically, is the reason why up to 2022 NAPIMS published a set of accounts separate from the financials published by NNPC, the corporation at the time. NNPC, prior to the passage of the PIA, acted as an agent of federation in managing the JV relationships, an agent of the federation. And that agency role was performed by NAPIMS. And so, NNPC at the time could not include the books of NAPIMS, or the books published by NAPIMS, let me put it that way, could not consolidate that. Why? Because those were the books of the Federation. Upon the passage of the PIA, the assets and liabilities of the Federation, as it relates to the JV, JV arrangements, were transferred from the Federation to NNPC Limited. And at that time, pursuant to that, there were no more books of the Federation to be published by NAPIMS, because the assets and liabilities that were either accounted for by NAPIMS on behalf of the Federation were no longer on the Federation's books.
Despite these answers from the auditors and NNPC executives, the committee kept repeating the same questions over and over again about the 210 trillion. Here's an observation from someone on Twitter. I saw the full video of the hearing that the Senate Committee on Public Accounts held for the NNPC, and man, Mr. Dakpo Segun, as the CFO, and the auditors must have been so exhausted trying to pass one simple point. They're just like two people who understand the technicals on that committee, a non-issue. I'm not even a finance person, and I know that the 200 trillion is an outrageous figure. The issues are not as big as they make them. I wonder why the more technically aware lawmakers are not attempting to set the tone of the conversation and addressing the things that matter. As we know, the NNPCL and its auditors did not show up for a subsequent hearing to answer further questions which the committee deemed unacceptable. Once again, here's the chair.
As a period for them to be able to respond to queries that emanated from their own books, I think it is unacceptable. For that, this committee is giving NNPC 10 working days from today to appear before the committee with the relevant answers to the questions earlier issued for this investigation to continue.
But here's the kicker, and this is the reason why everyone needs to focus on that hearing and watch the entire thing from June 18th. In that prior hearing, Senator Wadada said that some of the questions had already been answered and were repetitive. For example, he repeated, this is towards the end of the hearing, these are the questions again that they gave to the NNPC to go and answer and come back for the subsequent hearing, which the NNPCL and its auditors didn't answer. For example, he repeated the same question on NAPIMS that had already been answered by NNPCL Chief Financial Officer Dakpo Shegun and admitted they were repetitive.
Okay, NNPC/external auditors, question number 1. Can you explain to this committee the difference between NAPIMS and NNPC? That's why I said these questions will be reoccurring because this question had been asked before.
As we know, Dakpo Shegun, CFO, signed a letter to the committee stating that the NNPCL is currently on a managerial retreat, which the committee rejected. The clock is ticking as we get closer to the expiration of the 10-day ultimatum. Rotus Oddiri, Arise News.
Okay, that's the report by Rotus Oddiri on a subject that I think we had discussed previously on this program. But Rotus is here. Rotus,
yeah,
what's your take?
No,
then you wait for our response.
For sure. The thing is that everybody should watch that hearing. It's about 2 hours long. You will be informed as to what is really going on here. And 2-hour review of the financials. They just basically took 2 balance sheet items. It's almost a sacrilege of accounting. They took receivables and payables, mashed it together and said it's missing. It's all there in the financials. It should be focusing more on our report. We brought up the fact that what was being spent on the refineries, which is what Nigerians care about, and those charitable donations in the financials that there was little disclosure about. That's really what we think. I think that they should be looking at, not receivables and payables. I mean, those are just accounting entries there, and they explain them in depth, and we're even repeating themselves over and over and over again. They shouldn't have blown them off in this next meeting where they didn't show up, but we'll see what happens in 10 days.
Okay, I mean, Rotus, like I said before, nothing will come out of it. And when you look at it, with your explanation now about it, a lot of these things are crystal clear. But, we know how to dance in this country. Is it soccer? Is it Yawuzi? Is it, which other dance is popular now? Which dance did you people dance in your time in Calabar? Disco. Disco. Stopping us. Now we run the move. So we know how to dance around in this country. And the things we ought to look at, we don't look at them. What I've always called for is a major forensic audit of the NNPC. And it's not about the receivables and everything. Most of these accounting are crystal clear. But like I said before, I don't want to say too much.
I understand. There's some motivation.
But of to which you say National Assembly, was this not off your mic?
Yeah.
Did they do any detailed research on this?
And they passed the PIA, and the chair did not know that the PIA calls for the separation of the accounts of NAPIMS and the NNPC. Which was,
you see how we talk in parables. If a drum is beaten.
The highlight for me, Rotus, is just the importance of having all of these these hearings publicly streamed or broadcast or whatever it is, so that whatever transpires there, because the honest truth is that, when the headlines come out, when the stories are written, a lot gets lost in translation. It's all about, everybody has a different editorial direction and a different motive when they publish a story. So for me, it's just for us to continue to advocate for the continued broadcast of these hearings, so that we can see for ourselves and get a good judgment and say, you know what, I think this is the person who's credible. I think this is really what happened, what has happened in this instance. But I also hope that in future, the National Assembly, when they do call these hearings of this nature, I hope they can be a little bit more prepared, because there was a clear lack of preparation from their side, and terrible, especially with such a big, bold accusation. I was hoping to see a more thorough engagement.
Okay, some quick editorial points here. The Senate Committee on Public Accounts is doing its job. So Senator Wadada and his team, they have the bona fide right to say, come and explain. Now the NNPCL, led by the Chief Financial Officer, had been there. And the major point made by Dr. Shogun is that, look, these are issues about reconciliation. You are talking about 2017 to 2023 accounts. Dr. Shogun himself was Chief Financial Officer part of that time. And he says, give us 2 months to reconcile. But the Senate is saying, no, we are not giving you 2 months. Come before July 10, otherwise there will be a contempt charge. We will invoke our powers under the Constitution. What I need to say is this, or what I will say is this, that there should be no victimization, there should be no witch hunt, there should be no mindset. Now, the period that they are talking about was under the Mele Kyari period. It is on record that it was under Mele Kyari's watch that there was first audited accounts of NNPCL. He believed in the idea of transparency and accountability in addition to the other things that he does. So this mindset that, oh, we are going after Mele Kyari, I think is absolutely wrong. And I've condemned it on this platform. Number 2 or 3 is that Bayo Ojulari has said under his watch there will be transparency and accountability. He should live up to that word. The excuse that the Bayo Ojulari-led board gave is that they were on retreat. They went on retreat to Kigali. And I've condemned that here. Why did they have to go to Rwanda? They went with 5 private jets provided by a certain contractor. In fact, that's what the Senate Committee on Public Accounts should be looking at. Why would they just get a job? You say you are doing transparency and accountability, and you are going about in private jets provided by a contractor. Now that they are back, they should show up in front of the Senate Committee. And that reconciliation that Dr. Shogun talked about, let them go and reconcile whatever is missing in that regard. And it is finally instructive that the EFCC was at that hearing that Dr. Shogun attended. The Department of State Security, DSS, was there. The NFIU was there. So this is all in the spirit of transparency and accountability. And we too, we are there.
We're there.
We are watching.
We're there.
That's why you have brought the subject.
And real quick, to Bayo Ojulari's credit, they have started releasing monthly financials on the NNPC. Remember, we put the numbers here in April. So he has pushed to now start doing it on a monthly basis to start showing the revenues, oil production, and so on. So at least he's moving in that direction.
Transparency and accountability. And if they didn't go to Kigali with private jets, they should come and tell us. Okay, that's part of the question. We insist.
Indeed.
We need to know.
We need to know.
Yes. So Bayo Ojulari was 60 recently. You should run the transparency that he's talking about.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.